Morning, everyone. Is my voice audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Very clear, sir.
Sir, it's
Yes,
clear.
sir.
Yes, your voice is audible.
Very good morning, guys. So, can anyone quickly summarize what we have discussed in the last session?
We have discussed monolithic and microservices architecture, the differences, and the architecture of microservices, how the application will connect to the server. Like we have multiple servers like admin server, Zipkin server, config server, Kafka, Redis, DB. And yes, this is what we have discussed with sir yesterday.
Good.
And the theory we have discussed it actually.
We have also discussed the pros and cons of microservices architecture and advantages and how it is very useful nowadays.
Perfect, guys. So, welcome back. Today is our day 2 related to microservices with mini project development. So, yesterday we completed one session and today is our second session. So, in these 2 days, we are going to understand these concepts. What is monolithic architecture and what are the drawbacks available? What is microservices architecture? What are the advantages available with the microservices architecture? And what are the challenges with the microservices architecture? And what is the architecture that people will follow in order to develop one application with microservices? And so in the microservices development, several servers we are going to configure. One is a service registry, another one is admin server, another one is a Zipkin server, and we are going to develop several APIs, backend microservices. We will establish inter-service communication among the APIs by using Feign client, and we are going to use the API gateway, and we will use a cloud config server. So these are the topics. In the last session, we completed what is monolithic architecture and what are the problems available with monolithic architecture. Then we started introduction for the microservices. We discussed that microservice is not a programming language. Microservice is not a separate technology. It's not a API. It's not a framework.
Sir.
What is microservice? Microservice is one architectural design pattern, and that is universal design pattern. Anyone can use this design pattern in order to develop the application with loosely coupling. Anyone can use this design pattern in order to develop the application with the loosely coupling. So when we go for microservices development, there are several advantages available. All the functionalities we are not developing in one project. We are dividing the functionalities into multiple APIs. We are dividing the functionalities into multiple APIs so that we can achieve loosely coupling. Okay, and as APIs are developed, multiple APIs are developed, every API will be deployed in a separate server. Every API will be deployed in a separate server. So burden will be reduced on the server. The maintenance of the project is going to be very easy. The maintenance of the project is going to be very easy. And the next one, there is no single point of failure available. If one API is having a problem, no problem, because the remaining APIs will serve the requests of users. So there is no single point of failure when we go for microservices architecture, and multiple technologies we can use to develop the APIs. Quick deliveries also we can achieve when we go for this microservices development. Okay, and the next one, challenges also we discussed. So here the first challenge with the microservices architecture, which is bounded context. What is the meaning of bounded context? Deciding how many number of microservices we need to develop in one application, that is a difficult problem. Okay, that is a challenging task. How many microservices we need to take in order to develop our application, and what functionalities we need to develop in one microservice. Okay, and the next one, as we are developing the functionalities in multiple APIs, some duplicated configurations we need to do, repeated configurations we have to do in the microservices development, repeated configurations we have to do in the microservices development. And the next one, we are going to have one problem called visibility problem. You may not get the chance to work with all the microservices which are available in the application. Okay, so these are the things that we need to understand. Then coming to the architecture, there is no fixed architecture for the microservices development, guys. People will customize this architecture according to their requirement. There is no there is no fixed architecture between there is no fixed architecture for the microservices. People will customize that according to their requirement. Most of the people will follow this architecture. Here we can see Eureka server, which is service registry, then admin server, then Zipkin server, config server, Kafka, Redis, API gateway, Feign client, load balancing. Like this, several components will be available. We discussed what is a service registry. Service registry is one microservice which is used to maintain the list of services available in our application. What services are available in our project? All the services information we can maintain at one place by using service registry. Okay, all the services that are available in our application we can maintain at one place by using service registry. So we can identify what all the services available, what are the status of those services, and what is the URL. All the information of the service we can access at one place by using service registry. The next one, admin server. What is the role of admin server? Admin server is used to monitor and manage all our microservices at one place. Zipkin server is used to understand the request processing time. How much time each microservice is taking to process the request, we can understand by using Zipkin server. And the next one, config server is available. What is the purpose of this config server? Config server is used to load the configuration properties from outside of the application. So it is going to make our application, loosely coupled with the configuration properties. And the next one, Kafka, it is used for distributed streaming. Redis is used for distributed cache. And the next one, as we are developing multiple microservices, one microservice can communicate with another microservice. For that, we will use Feign client for inter-service communication. One microservice will communicate with another microservice by using Feign client. And the next one, API gateway will be available for our application. What is the purpose of this API gateway? API gateway is going to act as an entry point. API gateway is going to act as an entry point. So any request coming from the UI, that request will be validated. That request will be filtered at the API gateway. If the request is valid, API gateway will forward the request to the actual microservice by using routing. If the request is invalid, API gateway will stop that request processing and will send error response back to the UI or error response back to the client. So this is the architecture. So today, let us start the development of this project, guys. So first I am going to start with service registry. First we are going to start with service registry. So as we discussed, it is going to act as a discovery server. It is used to maintain all the services which are available in our application. What is the name of the service? What is the status of the service? What is the URL of the service? All these things we can maintain at one place by using service registry. So how to develop this service registry application? In our microservices architecture, the very first thing that we are going to develop, that is service registry application. So in this application, we are going to use Eureka server as a service registry. So what is the first thing that we need to do? Create one Spring Boot application with below dependency, which is Eureka server. This Eureka server dependency we will access from Spring Cloud library. Spring Cloud Starter, Netflix Eureka server. Create Spring Boot application. Create one Spring Boot application with this dependency. So with this dependency, we are going to get the Eureka server. And here to represent this application as a Eureka server application, we are going to use one annotation called enable Eureka server annotation in the boot start class. So when we create Spring Boot application, by default one start class will be available. On top of this class, we need to write one annotation called enable Eureka server annotation. Then that application will be considered as a Eureka server, and configure the properties in the properties file or YML file. So we are going to configure server port number. So in general, when we create the boot application, we will get the Tomcat as a default container. Tomcat container will use default port number 8080. You can use 8080 also, but it is recommended to run the Eureka server on the port number 8761. Sir, why we should use the port number as only 8761? If you use the port number as 8761, then our microservices will be auto registered with the Eureka server. So whenever you create a Spring Boot application with this dependency, then you will get the Eureka server for your application. How to start this Eureka server? You configure one annotation in the boot start class. Configure enable Eureka server annotation in the boot start class. Then you change the server port number. The default port number is 8080. We are customizing the port number to 8761. Why we are customizing the port number to 8761? If you configure the port number as 8761, our backend microservices, our APIs are available, right? Our APIs will be auto register with the Eureka server. If you run your microservice, it will register with the Eureka server by default. It will act as a Eureka client. Eureka server, Eureka client. Our microservices, API 1, API 2, API 3, they should act as Eureka clients. They should act as Eureka clients. So that is the reason I'm going with the port number 8761. Okay, so this is the procedure in order to develop our first microservice in this architecture. The first microservice I'm going to develop, service registry. What is the role of service registry? It is used to maintain all the APIs information at one place. Now, let me start that, guys. Okay, let me create a new workspace folder. Whatever the projects I'm developing, after the class is completed, I will push all these projects to my GitHub repository and I will share the link also, guys. Okay, I'm creating this as my microservices workspace. I'm choosing the new workspace here. Open my Spring Toolsuite IDE. You can use any IDE, guys. IntelliJ IDE also you can use in order to develop these applications. If you go with IntelliJ Community Edition, directly you cannot create the project. First, you need to create the project from Initializer website, then download that project, then import that project. Okay. With this, my Toolsuite IDE is open. Let me change the font, colors and fonts. Let me increase the font size. Yeah. Okay, with this my IDE is ready. Now let me create Spring Starter project, create new Spring Starter project. So this is my first application. I'm going to name this as 01 Service Registry. 01 Service Registry. I'm using Maven as a build tool. Packaging type is a jar. Group ID, I'm using in.ashok IT. And package, start package, base package, in.ashok IT. So my first project, 01 Service Registry. Now, so we need to select one dependency, guys. As we discussed, we are going to select a dependency for Eureka server. So it is from Spring Cloud Discovery Server. Let us select this Eureka server. Spring Cloud Netflix Eureka server. So this is Eureka server is coming from Spring Cloud Netflix library. Select that dependency. Then if you want, you can select dev tools also. If any changes happened in the project, server will be reloaded, server will be restarted immediately. So click on next, click on finish. So with this, our first microservice got created, which is service registry. So by default, it will run on the port number 8080, but recommended to use 8761. Why we need to use 8761? If Eureka server is running on the port number 8761, our microservices can be auto registered with the Eureka server. If you don't configure port number as 8761, then our microservices should be registered with the Eureka server manually. I will show you auto registration and I will show you manual registration also. And today you need to have 100% focus, guys. Today you need to have 100% focus because yesterday theory completed. Today completely practical session. Today completely coding part will be available. So don't attend the classes from mobile and don't use your mobile when you are attending the class because it is completely coding session. If you deviate for 2 minutes of time, then you cannot understand the next concept. If you deviate from the session, you can't understand the next concept. So you need to give 100% attention. You need to be very strict in order to attend this session. So concentration is very important. Otherwise, you cannot get the clarity. So it is not theory. It is completely coding session today. Okay, so we are going to develop a mini project on the microservices. So if anybody attending from mobile, please immediately join from your laptop and concentrate on the class properly. Okay, so I have created one application which I am going to use as service registry. So I'm going to use Eureka server as a service registry. For that, I'm using Spring Cloud Netflix library. Before going to start the coding, could you please confirm? Is my voice clear for everyone? Could you please confirm? Is my voice clear for everyone? My voice, my screen, my video, everything is clear? Very good. So I created one Spring Boot application. In this Spring Boot application, I added one dependency called Eureka server, and I added one more dependency called DevTools. That Eureka server dependency we are getting from Spring Cloud Starter Netflix library, and here boot application got created. So you can check in the pom.xml. In this Spring Boot application, pom.xml is available. There you can find out the dependencies I have added. Two dependencies I have selected, guys. One is Eureka server dependency I have selected. Another one is DevTools dependency I have selected. By default, test dependency also will be available. And you remember which version of the Spring Boot we are using. We are using latest version of the Spring Boot, that is 3.3.3. In the interview, they will ask you which is Spring Cloud version you are using. So when we are adding Eureka server dependency, Spring Cloud Starter Netflix Eureka server, this is the dependency that we are adding. This is the Spring Cloud library. So which version of the Spring Cloud you are using, that also you need to remember. 2023.0.3. So Java version 17, Spring Boot version 3.3.3, and Spring Cloud version 2023.0.3. So in the interviews, they will ask this question also. Are you using Eureka server in your project? Then if you say yes, then can you tell me which version of the Spring Cloud you are using in your project? So you need to remember this version number also. Okay, so project is created. Now let us go here. Start class is available, which is entry point for our boot application. Now here, this application class, this is start class of the Spring Boot, entry point for the boot application. So let me represent this application is working as Eureka. So for that we are going to write one annotation called enable Eureka server. I'm writing one annotation which is called enable Eureka server. If I write this annotation, then this application will act as a Eureka server application, which we can call as service registry application, and we can call as service discovery application also. So let me import this annotation, enable Eureka server annotation. I'm importing the annotation called enable Eureka server annotation, which will represent this application is going to act as a Eureka server. Currently, I'm not changing the port number. Just let me do the Maven update. Update this project and run this application. Start class is available, right? Run this as a boot application and let us see Eureka server dashboard. Right click, run as boot application, run as Spring Boot application. So it will run with the embedded container. So that is a Tomcat. By default, we are going to get Tomcat as an embedded container. It will run on the port number 8080. So my Eureka server project is getting started. You can check the console. Bean factory is created. Tomcat server is started. Okay, what is the port number? With the port number 8080, it is getting started. Now it is exposing actuator endpoint also. We are getting some error. Cannot execute request on any known server. That is fine. Now you can see here our Eureka server application got started, which is using the port number 8080. Now let's go to browser and let us access localhost colon 8080. Localhost colon 8080. So when I hit this URL localhost colon 8080, can you see Eureka dashboard is coming? Are we able to access Eureka dashboard? Here you no need to add the web starter. If you add the Eureka server, by default it will take care of the Tomcat container. Web starter is not required because we are adding Eureka server. So when we add the Eureka server, it will take care of the web server which is required to run our application. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? We are able to create the boot application by adding one dependency, and we configured one annotation at the start class of the Spring Boot, and I'm able to start my application. My application is running. Eureka server I'm able to access. Eureka dashboard is available. So localhost colon 8080 Eureka server dashboard I'm able to access. Currently, any microservice registered with the Eureka? Do you have any clients with the Eureka as of now? No, just Eureka server is available. There are no clients available. Who are going to act as a client for the Eureka? Our microservices. Flights API, hotels API, trains API, cabs API, or your credit card API, debit card API, net banking API, whatever the backend microservices we are going to develop, those backend microservices will register with the Eureka server. So Eureka server is available. It is running on the port number 8080. Let me change that port number to 8761. Why I am changing the port number to 8761? Clients will be auto registered with the Eureka. You don't need to register the clients manually. How to change it? Go to this properties file. So you can configure that port number in the properties file, or you can change the properties file to YML file also. Now let me change this properties file to the YML file. Application or properties file is available. You can convert this properties file to YML file. I think they removed that option. Earlier here, directly there will be one option called, yes, we have the option now also. Application properties, Spring option, convert to dot properties to dot YML. Currently, the properties files are outdated, guys. In the market, people are using YML files. So I am converting the dot properties file to dot YML. Spring converted to YML. Okay. Yes, the properties file is updated to YML file. Now let me configure a port number. How we are going to configure port number? Server.port. So YML syntax, server.port we are going to use. So the YML syntax we need to follow, and you can use control space if you don't know that syntax. So it is complete, it is computing that proposal. Server.port I need to configure. Generally server.port. Yes, that is the syntax. The port number I am configuring as 8761. The port number I configured 8761 in this YML. Okay, let us do the Maven update. Update this project, force update. Application or properties file is available. Let me delete that, it's not required. We are going with only application.yml. Yeah, properties file got deleted and I am using only YML file. Application name is available, server port is available. So application name is one property and server name, server port is the another property. Let me update the project. As we are changing the properties file or YML file, we need to update this Maven project, and let us run this application. Start class is available, run as boot application. Now it is going to start on the port number 8761. If you don't configure the port number, default port number, it is going to use 8080. So once the application is started, we can access Eureka dashboard. In the Eureka dashboard, it will show you what are the services which are registered with the Eureka server. Now you can see that Tomcat server is started with the port number 8761. Okay, application started with the port number 8761. Now let us go to Eureka server dashboard and refresh. Yes, so I'm trying to access this dashboard with the port number 8761. Yeah, Eureka server dashboard is loaded. In the Eureka server dashboard, here you can see one option, instances currently registered with the Eureka. That means what are the microservices, which microservices are acting as clients for the Eureka. That information you can see in the dashboard. What is the name of the microservice? How many instances available for the microservices? What is the status of the microservice? What is the URL of the microservice that we can identify? But currently, if you observe, one instance already registered. Which instance is registered? Same project is registered with the Eureka server. So I created a service registry application. It is acting as a Eureka server and it is also acting as a Eureka client also. I created one application. That application name is 01 service registry. Same application is registered with the Eureka client also. So that this application is acting as a server. This application is acting as a client also. I don't want this application as a client. I want other applications to register as clients. Okay. So currently what is happening? I created one Spring Boot application. In that Spring Boot application, I added Eureka server dependency, which is coming from Spring Cloud Starter Netflix library. And I added dev tools to reload the server. In the boot start class, I added one annotation called enable Eureka server annotation. And I configure the port number. And I configure the port number as 8761. So when I run this application is acting as a Eureka server and it is also acting as a Eureka client. That is the reason in the Eureka dashboard you can see instances currently registered with the Eureka. Same application is registered as a client also. I don't want the same application to register as a client. Okay, this should act as only server. It should not act as a client. My clients are actual microservices. How to stop this application to register as a client? For that, we need to write one property, eureka.client.register with Eureka false. I'm writing eureka.client.register with Eureka false. I am going to write. If I write Eureka client register with Eureka false, then what is going to happen? This application will act as only server. This application will not act as client. Now you see no instances available. Earlier, same application displayed as a client also. Eureka server, Eureka client. What is the role of Eureka server in the microservices? Eureka server is used to provide a dashboard with the information of all the microservices available in the application. Which microservice available? What is the name? What is the status? What is the health? How many instances available for one microservice? What is the URL of the microservice? Everything we can access from the Eureka dashboard. So why we are configuring Eureka port number as 8761, guys? What is the reason for configuring Eureka port number as 8761? If a service registry project port is 8761, then clients can discover service registry and will register automatically with the service registry. If service registry running on any other port number, then we have to register clients with the service registry manually. Okay, note 1 and note 2. You can run the service registry on any port number. So what is the difference? If you run the service registry on the port number 8761, then clients can discover service registry and will register automatically with the service registry. If a service registry project running on any other port number apart from 8761, then you need to register clients with the service registry manually. Once your application is started, you can access Eureka dashboard by using this URL. 8761 is the port number. Are you guys able to understand how to develop a service registry application for our microservices? So first, what is a service registry? Yesterday we learnt that concept theoretically. Service registry is used to maintain all the microservices information at one place by using a dashboard. Name, status, URL, and the health of the microservices we can access at one place. It is also called as service discovery. We can use Eureka server as a service registry. How to use this Eureka server as a service registry? This Eureka server provided by Spring Cloud Netflix library, not our OTT Netflix guys. That is different. This is different. OTT Netflix is different. Spring Cloud Netflix is different. Eureka server provided by Spring Cloud Netflix library, and it is providing user interface to get all the microservices information. How we created that service registry? I'm repeating once again. I created one boot application. At the time of creating the application, I selected Eureka server dependency and I selected dev tools also. Then in the start class, I added one annotation and I configured port number as 8761. Then I'm starting my application, which is running with the Tomcat server on the port number 8761. Why I am using port number as 8761? If the port number is 8761 for Eureka, that microservices can discover the Eureka server, can register automatically. If your port number is not 8761, then clients cannot register automatically. Manually, we need to register the clients. So with this, my Eureka server project is ready. I'm able to run this application and I'm able to access my Eureka dashboard. My Eureka server is ready, but currently no clients available for the Eureka. Earlier, same application acted as a server as well as client also. That's why I have disabled that registration by using Eureka client register with Eureka false. So this application, the first application I created, it should act as a server, not as a client. So that's why I'm configuring Eureka client register with Eureka is equal to false. So this is my application.yml file. How I created application.yml file? I have used the IDE option. I converted the properties file to YML file directly. The properties file concept is outdated in the market. For the configurations, people are using YML. And currently, the YML file is available within the project. This is not recommended. This is our first project. So that's why YML file is available within our project. If a YML file is available within our project, then our application is tightly coupled with the YML. In the real-time projects, the YML files, properties files will be available in the GitHub or outside of the project. How to load the YML files from outside of the project? That's where yesterday I told you one concept called config server. What is the purpose of config server? Config server is used to read the properties from outside. So we should not keep the properties file, YML file inside the project. If you keep them inside, application is tightly coupled with the properties. Tomorrow, if you change the properties, you need to recompile the project, you need to repackage the project, you need to redeploy the project. Maintenance will become difficult. To simplify the deployment process of our application, properties files we need to separate from the application. How can we separate and how can we load it? That's where config server concept will be used in the project. Are you able to understand what is the service registry and why we are using service registry and how we are able to develop our service registry application? If you are clear with the first microservice development, can you respond in the chat box? If you are clear with the service registry development, can you respond in the chat box so that I will go for the next microservice development? Theoretically and practically, you should get the clarity. If anybody joining from the mobile, you can't concentrate on the class. You can't see the code, whatever I'm writing. Today, there is no theory. Today's session is completely practical session. We are developing one project. If you don't utilize, then it is your bad luck. I can't do anything. I'm giving my 100%. I'm putting my 100% efforts to deliver the microservices project. Whatever the theory we have learned, today we are implementing that. How to register manually? I will show you that. If I develop one client application, then I will show you how to register client manually with the Eureka if the port number is different. Are you clear? I'm not getting the response. I'm not getting the response from the people who are attending in the Zoom class and the people who are watching YouTube live. People who are watching in the YouTube live, Please like this video and support us. If you give one like, then I will get more energy. Good. Fine. So I hope you got this point. If project port number is 8761, our microservices can register automatically. If a port number is not 8761, manually we need to register. How to register manually? I will show you by developing one client application. Now my Eureka server is running on the port number 8761. Okay. Now next one, let us start the admin server development. So first microservice development is completed, guys. So this first microservice is running on the port number 8761. Why I am using port number 8761? I already told you. Clients can auto register with the Eureka if a port is 8761. Next, let me go and develop admin server here. Let me go and develop the admin server. What is the role of admin server in the microservices? Admin server is used to monitor and manage all the microservices at one place. Our application can contain 30, 40, 50, 100 microservices also. All those microservices I want to monitor at one place. For that we are going to use admin server. Admin server will provide a beautiful user interface to access all the microservices actuators at one place. What we can monitor by using this admin server? We can do health checks of the microservices. We can check the config props of the microservices. We can check URL mappings of the microservices. We can check the beans loaded by the microservices. We can change the log levels of the microservices. We can download thread dumps. We can download heap dumps of the microservices by using this admin server. Then how to develop admin server application? I'm going to develop a second microservice here. First microservice is service registry, which is Eureka server. Okay, steps to develop admin server application. So we need to create one Spring Boot application and we need to use that application as the admin server, and by using that we are going to monitor and manage all our applications at one place. So how to develop a admin server project? Create one boot application with below dependencies. Okay, we need to create one Spring Boot application with admin server dependency. At the time of creating the project only, we are going to configure one dependency called admin server. And to enable the admin server, we are going to configure, in this project we will use one annotation called enable admin server annotation at the start class. For Eureka application, we used annotation called enable Eureka server. For admin server project, we will use annotation called enable admin server. Then changing the port number, it's not required, it is optional. By default, we'll go with 8080. But two projects cannot run on the same port number. It's better to change the port number. Once it is configured, then you can run your application and you can access your application in the browser. Then we can see admin server UI. So create one Spring Boot application with admin server dependency. Create one Spring Boot application with the admin server dependency. Then this dependency we can select while creating the project. And once the project is created, to represent this project as an admin server project, we are going to configure enable admin server annotation at the start class of the application. Then we are going to change the port number. Changing the port number is optional. Then you can run the application. Once the application is started, you can access its URL in the browser and you can see admin server dashboard. Okay, let me go and develop that project. Second application I am going to develop 02 service. This is Spring Starter project. 02 project I am going to create. I am going to name it as admin server. I'm going to name it as admin server Maven project. Packaging is jar, Java 17, group ID and base package. Click on next. Yeah, dependencies. So let me search for the dependency called admin server. Yes, code centric Spring Boot admin. Actually, this is Spring Boot admin server we are using. This is not from the Spring Boot libraries, guys. Code centric company provided this admin server. Spring Boot is integrating with that admin server. So actual this Spring Boot admin server topic that we are using This is developed by code-centric company, and Spring Boot integrated that library for us in order to monitor and manage our microservices. So you see, required for your application to register with a code-centric Spring Boot admin server interface. So I'm selecting Spring Boot admin server, sorry, not admin client, guys. So we need to select admin server dependency. Admin server will be available, admin client will be available. So code centric Spring Boot admin client, yes. Admin server dependency we need to select. So when we are developing the microservices, then we are going to select the client dependency. For Spring Boot admin, client available, server available. Currently we are developing the server. Can you see this? A community project to manage and monitor your Spring Boot applications. It provides a UI on top of the Spring Boot actuator endpoints. So in the Spring Boot, we are having actuators concept to monitor and manage our applications. On top of those actuators, this user interface will be provided by admin server. So by using this admin server, all the microservices can be monitored, can be managed at one place. Who provided this admin server? Admin server provided by code-centric company. It is a community project. Spring Boot people has taken that community project and integrated with the Spring Boot. So Spring Boot will give actuators. To monitor the actuators, to access the actuators at one place, this admin server project we are going to create. Admin client, admin server. Currently we are creating admin server. Client we are going to use for microservices. When I am going to develop a microservice, then I will use client dependency. Currently let me go with admin server dependency. Click on next, click on next one. Dev tools dependency also we can add. If any changes are required, then the server will be automatically reloaded. Two dependencies I'm selecting. Dev tools, admin server. Click on next and finish. So with this, my second microservice is getting created, which is admin server project. Now, here also we need to configure the annotation, that is enable admin server annotation. At the start class of this Spring Boot, we need to configure that annotation called enable admin server. Project is getting created. Go to pom.xml file and let us see the dependencies which are available. Now, Spring Boot admin version 3.3.3. Spring Boot version 3.3.3. Admin version is also 3.3.3. There is no cloud dependency here because admin server not from the Spring Cloud. Admin server from the code centric. Eureka server from the Spring Cloud. Okay, so this is admin starter server dependency added. Dev tools dependency is added. That's it. Now go here. Go to the start class of the application. Configure one annotation, that is enable admin server. Let us write that annotation. Enable admin server. Enable one annotation called enable admin server. That's it. Port number by default 8080, right? I'm going to change it. You can configure any port number. Convert the properties file to YML file. Spring, convert to .properties to .yml. YML file is available. Still properties file available. Let me delete it. I don't need the properties file. I'm going to use YML. 02 admin server. Configure server port number. Configure server port number. Server.port. Configure server.port. You can give any port number for this. I'm giving 1111. Okay, you can give any port number. I'm giving the port number as 1111. Good. Now let me do the Maven update. Update Maven project because the YML file content got modified. Whenever you change the properties file or YML file or pom.xml, let's do Maven update so that it will download the latest dependencies. Right. So with this, my admin server project is ready. Let me go to the start class and let me run this application. Right click, run as boot application. Admin server project I'm starting. For admin server, the port number I configured as 1111. It's not mandatory. You can use any port number. There is no problem. You can use any port number. There is no problem. Are you able to follow me? Are you able to follow me, guys? Now Eureka server dashboard is available. Currently no instances available with the Eureka. Now let me go and access my admin server. Localhost colon 1111. 1111 is the port number I configured for my admin server. Yes, with this I'm able to access my admin server dashboard. Currently admin server available, but there are no applications available with the admin server. No applications registered with the admin server. So what is the meaning of that? Eureka server is ready, no clients available, admin server is available, currently no applications are registered. What is the meaning of no applications registered? Our actual microservices are not available. Client applications are not available. The client applications are currently not available. Are you able to follow this? Are you able to follow this? Eureka server is ready, admin server is ready. Eureka server running on the port number 8761. Admin server is running on the port number 1111. Admin server running on the port number 1111. What is the process we are following to develop this admin server? I created boot application with admin server dependency and I configured one annotation called enable admin server annotation at the start class. And I have changed my port number also. I configured port number as 1111, but it's not mandatory. You can give any port number. There is no problem. Then we are going to run our application and we are able to access that application in the browser. This is the URL to access our admin server dashboard. Currently in the admin server dashboard, no clients are available. Eureka is running on the port number 8761. Admin server is running on the port number 1111. Eureka is running on the port number 8761. Admin server is running on the port number 1111. So what is the purpose of this Eureka and what is the purpose of this admin server? Eureka server will provide you all the microservices information at one place. Admin server will give you user interface to monitor and manage your microservices at one place. Is this clear for you? Is this clear for all of you? Come on, guys. Is this clear for all of you? What is the purpose of admin server and what is the purpose of this Eureka server? If you are clear, please respond in the chat box. Then I will develop, I will work on Zipkin server setup now. I will work on Zipkin server setup now. If you are clear, please respond in the chat box. If you are clear, please respond in the chat box. Come on. If you are clear, please respond in the chat box. What is the purpose of Eureka server and what is the purpose of admin server that we have created? I'm not getting response in the chat box. Admin server is used to monitor and manage all the APIs at one place. Currently, Eureka server is available and admin server is available. Currently, Eureka server is available, admin server is available. Next one, let us go for Zipkin server. So what is the meaning of Zipkin server? What is a Zipkin server, guys? Zipkin server is used for distributed tracing. Zipkin server is used for distributed tracing. You see in the diagram here, admin server is ready, Eureka server is ready. Eureka server maintains all the microservices information at one place. Admin server is used to monitor all the APIs at one place. Now I'm going with a Zipkin server. What is the purpose of Zipkin server? Yesterday we discussed theoretically. Zipkin server is used for distributed tracing of our requests. Zipkin server is used for distributed tracing of our requests. How much time taking to process one request, how many microservices involved in the request processing, okay, and which microservice is processing the request quickly, which microservice is taking more time to process the request. That information we can identify by using Zipkin server. Which microservice is processing the request quickly, which microservice is taking more time to process the request, how many microservices involved in one request processing, we can understand by using Zipkin server. So how can we work with this Zipkin server, guys? So actually Zipkin server project you no need to develop. Okay, so Eureka server project we developed, admin server project we developed, but for the Zipkin server we no need to develop that project because Zipkin project is already available in the internet as a jar file. So Zipkin server jar file is already available. You can download that Zipkin jar file from the internet. Once the jar file is available, you can run that jar file directly. Zipkin is also a Spring Boot application, but it is a ready-made project. Already they developed it and they provided the Zipkin jar in the internet. What you need to do, you just download the Zipkin jar file and you run the Zipkin jar file by using this command. So the Zipkin server by default will run on the port number 9411. Zipkin server will run on the port number 9411. So once the Zipkin server is started, you access your Zipkin server dashboard by using below URL. So if you can follow these 4 steps right, then your Zipkin server will be ready. If you use these 4 steps now, then your Zipkin server will be ready. Download Zipkin jar file. This is the URL for that. Run the Zipkin jar file using this command. Then Zipkin server will run on the port number 9411 and you can access the Zipkin server dashboard with this URL. So let me go to this URL and let me download the Zipkin server from internet. Go to this, use this URL, paste in the browser. Yes, we are able to access Zipkin website. So they are telling that you can download the Zipkin jar. If you have Java 17 or a higher version installed, you can download the latest release of the Zipkin jar. If you click on the latest release here, the Zipkin jar file will be downloaded into your system. Now you can see the Zipkin jar file is getting downloaded in my system. So that is a Spring Boot project. It is downloaded as a jar file. Let me open. In my downloads folder, that Zipkin jar file is downloaded. You can check this. So Zipkin jar file is downloaded. Zipkin server 3.4.1 exec.jar. Let me take this Zipkin jar file. Let me keep into our folder classes. Yeah, something like 27 JRTP. Here I am keeping this one. My Zipkin server jar file is available. How to run this jar file? Let me open a command prompt from the location where the jar file is available. My jar file is available in this location, e-classes 27 JRTP. So you can check it. You can check it that Zipkin jar file is available in this location. 27 JRTP folder is available. In this folder, Zipkin server jar is available. How to run this jar file? Java space -jar space Zipkin server.jar. So the jar file is downloaded from the internet. Now I am running this jar file. Run this jar file. It will start the Zipkin server. Yes, this is the Zipkin banner. Zipkin server is getting started and the Zipkin server will use port number 9411. Okay, the Zipkin server is getting started. You can see the port number. It is running on the port number 9411. You can access the Zipkin server by using this URL. Let's go to browser, localhost colon 9411. Localhost colon 9411. We are able to access our Zipkin dashboard. What is the purpose of Zipkin dashboard? To check the traces, distributed tracing we can achieve by using Zipkin server. So we are going to develop the microservices. how much time our microservice is taking to process a request, how many microservices involved in our request processing. We can track that information by using Zipkin server. So with this, Eureka server is ready, admin server is ready, Zipkin server is also ready. But our microservices are not available as of now. Just we developed Eureka server, admin server. Eureka server running on the port number 8761, admin server running on the port number 1111. My Zipkin server is running on the port number 9411. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear with the Eureka server, admin server, Zipkin server, and what is the purpose of them and how to work with them? Admin server is used to monitor and manage all the APIs at one place. Zipkin server is used for distributed tracing. Zipkin server is used for distributed tracing. Admin server is used for monitoring and managing the APIs at one place. Service registry, it is used to maintain the services information at one place. So Eureka server is available running on port number 8761. Admin server available running on the port number 1111. Zipkin server is available running on the port number 9411. Zipkin server project I have not developed. I downloaded the jar file of the Zipkin server and I have executed that jar file. So this is the URL from where you can download the Zipkin jar. Then you run this command. Go to the location of your jar file. Then run this command. Then Zipkin server will start. Its port number is going to be 9411. Then you can access the Zipkin dashboard. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? What is Eureka? What is Eureka server? And what is admin server? And what is Zipkin server? Come on, respond in the chat box. Yes. Next one, config server is available, guys. This part we will develop later point of time because config server itself will take 1 hour to understand. So config server project we will develop separately. So first we are going to develop our microservices. I will develop 2 microservices now. Whatever the microservices I'm going to develop, this microservice will act as a client for service registry, will act as a client for Eureka server. I mean, as acting as a client for admin server, will act as a client for the Zipkin server. As of now, Eureka server is ready, admin server is ready, Zipkin server is ready. Now I want to develop actual microservices, API 1 and API 2. These API 1 and API 2 are going to act as clients for Eureka server, client for admin server, client for Zipkin server. Okay, so let me develop first microservice. Microservice nothing but our REST API. What is the meaning of microservice, guys? Microservice nothing but our REST API. So let me develop one simple REST API. Let me name it as welcome API. If you send the request to that welcome API, it will give you welcome message. Okay, so how to create one welcome API and observe the diagram. Whatever the welcome API I'm going to develop, that welcome API acting as a client for Eureka, client for admin, client for Zipkin. So one microservice is going to act as a client for Eureka server, act as a client for admin server, act as a client for Zipkin server. Why that microservice should act as a client for these many servers? Eureka server should provide the information about the microservice. If our microservice acting as a client for the Eureka, then only Eureka can display name of the service, status of the service, URL of the service. If our microservice is registered with the admin server, then only admin server will provide the UI to monitor and manage our microservice. If our microservice acting as a client for the Zipkin, then Zipkin server will provide the distributed tracing. How many requests are coming to our microservice? How much time it is taking to process each request? For which request it is taking less time? For which request it is taking more time? All that information we can access. So if you want to access this information of your microservice should act as a client for Eureka, should act as a client for admin server, should act as a client for Zipkin server also. Are you guys able to follow me? Eureka server, admin server, Zipkin server. Whatever the microservice we are going to develop, that microservice should act as a client for all these servers. So how to develop our microservice which is going to act as a client for Eureka, for admin, for Zipkin. Let's start the development. So first let us create one Spring Boot application with several dependencies, guys. You need to create one Spring Boot application with the discovery client dependency and with the admin client dependency. Our application should act as a client for Eureka server. So Eureka discovery client we need to add. Our application should act as a client for admin server. Admin client dependency we need to add. Our application should act as a Zipkin client. So we are going to add a Zipkin dependency. So to represent our microservice is a client for Eureka. Eureka client dependency we are adding. To represent our application is admin client. Admin client dependency we are adding. To represent our application as a Zipkin client, Zipkin dependency we are adding. With these three dependencies, our microservice is going to act as a client for Eureka server, for admin server, for Zipkin server. Then in our microservice, I need to develop one REST controller. Microservice nothing but a REST API. To develop a REST API, REST controller is required. To develop the REST controller, I'm using web starter dependency. If any changes required in the application to restart, if any changes we have, if you make any change in the application, server should be restarted. For that, I'm using Day-02. And to monitor and manage application, actuator. If you add the actuator, then admin server will provide the UI to access the actuator endpoints. So whatever the microservice we are going to develop, for that microservice we need to add all these dependencies. So in the future, config server will come, then configure client dependency also we need to add. Look at the first step to develop a actual microservice. Steps to develop the welcome API. Eureka discovery client, admin client, Zipkin, web starter, dev tools, actuator. So total 6 dependencies we are adding for our microservice development. Microservice nothing but one REST API. Microservice nothing but one REST API. Are you guys able to follow me? Are you guys able to follow me? I'm not getting response. Anybody feeling it is difficult? I'm trying my best to explain you. If you are not able to understand, let me know. I will repeat once again. Your Sunday should not be wasted. You are giving 2 to 3 hours of time for me. So there should be some benefit. You need to get some benefit out of this. I don't want to waste your time. Okay, whatever the concept I'm explaining, that should be injected into your brain. If you are not able to understand, then I will repeat that once again. It is a free workshop. Sir will not teach completely. No. Whatever that I have promised, I'm going to complete everything practically. Very good. Now let me create my microservice application, guys. Actual, as of now, I configure my servers only. Service registry, admin server, Eureka server. Servers I configure for managing purpose. For managing the microservices, my servers are ready. Now I need to develop actual microservice. So let me go here, file, new, Spring Starter project. Actually, I'm giving the name as a 04, guys. 03 is a Zipkin. Zipkin we are not creating. Zipkin jar file we downloaded. So let me give the name as a 04 welcome API. I'm giving the name it as welcome service or welcome API. This is our actual microservice. Okay. Dependencies we need to add very carefully, guys. Dev tools, first let me add one by one. Eureka discovery client. My microservice should act as a client for the Eureka. So that's why I'm selecting one dependency called Eureka Discovery Client. What is this Eureka Discovery Client? REST-based service for locating the services for the purpose of load balancing and failover of middle tier servers. So Eureka Discovery Client dependency we are adding. So with this dependency, we can make our application as a client and it will register with the Eureka. Next one, I want to make this application as a client for admin server also for managing and monitoring purpose. So let me add one dependency called admin server dependency. So admin client server is already available. We need to add the client dependency. Code centric Spring Boot admin client dependency I have added. Okay, required for your application to register with the admin server instance. Server is already running on the port number 1111. So this welcome service I'm going to make as a client for the admin server. And Zipkin server already running on the port number 9411. So my microservice should act as a client for the Zipkin. So observability purpose. So Zipkin dependency I'm adding. Enable and expose span and trace IDs of the Zipkin. So select the Zipkin dependency. Okay, 3 dependencies I have selected. Discovery client dependency, admin client dependency, Zipkin dependency. Now web starter, dev tools, actuator. Web starter to create a REST controller, dev tools to reload the server, to restart the server, actuator for monitoring endpoints we need to provide. Now let me select web starter, Spring Boot, Spring Web dependency I need to select. Spring Web dependency I have to select. Yes, Spring Web dependency I selected. Dev tools dependency I am selecting to restart the server when there is some change in the application, and actuator I am selecting. Spring Boot actuator, providing the production ready features of the application. Built-in actuator endpoints available. So total 6 dependencies I selected. In future, config client also will be added. If config server project is ready, then in our microservice we need to add config client also. Config server is little confusing topic, guys. I will discuss that separately. Click on next and click on finish. So with this, my microservice is created. Just project is created. I want to represent this project as a Eureka client. To represent this project as a Eureka client, I'm going to configure discovery client annotation at the start class. So for the server, enable Eureka server. Now this project enable discovery client annotation. That means this application is going to act as a client for the Eureka server. Server is running on the 8761, it will be registered automatically. If server running on the different port number, manually we need to register. How to register manually? I will show you. Once this Eureka's client dependency is added, then we need to create one REST controller for processing the request and configure the properties in the YML. Server port number, application name, admin server URL, that Eureka server URL, actuator endpoints we need to configure. Let's do that. First, let me go here. My welcome service is ready. Go to pom.xml and see the dependencies which are available. See the dependencies which are available here. So what are the dependencies we configured? Yeah. Actuator dependency configured, web starter dependency configured, admin client dependency configured, Zipkin we added na, micrometer dependency is added, Eureka client dependency is available, dev tools dependency available, test is coming by default. So total 6 dependencies we have added. Admin version, cloud version, Spring Boot version. All these version numbers we need to remember. Java version we are using 17. For Spring Boot 3.x version, Java 17 is a mandatory, guys. Now go to start class of our application. Let me represent this application as a Eureka client. For this, we need to write one annotation, that is enable discovery client. Yes, I'm writing one annotation called enable discovery client annotation. Okay, next let me change this properties file to YML file and I can configure port numbers here. Application name is available. which is 04 welcome service is available. Configure port number for this application. Okay, so the port number I will configure server.port. Server.port number I am giving this one as 8081. Server port number I am configuring as 8081. Application name welcome service. Server port number 8081. This application should register with the Eureka server. Do I need to register manually or no need to register manually now? Guys, my application should register with the Eureka server manually. No need to register with the Eureka server manually. Eureka already running on the 8761. No need to register manually. Automatically it will register. Suppose if Eureka server is not running on the 8761, then we need to register manually. How to register our application with the Eureka server manually? For that we should write one property. What is that property we need to write? Eureka dot client dot service URL dot Eureka dot client dot service URL dot default zone. That we need to configure http colon localhost colon 8761/Eureka. So if you write this property, then our microservice will register with the Eureka server. But if Eureka server is 8761 port, this property not required. It will automatically register with the Eureka. If your Eureka server port number is anything something like 9090, then this property we need to write in the microservice. This is called manual registration with the Eureka server. If you write this property, then your application will register with the Eureka server manually. If it is 8761, you no need to write this property. Are you guys able to understand? Eureka client service URL. That means where is Eureka server available? You need to tell the URL of the Eureka. And remember that point. I already told you. If Eureka server is running on the 8761, client will be auto registered. If Eureka server running on any other port number, manually we need to register. How to register manually? In our microservice we should write this property. Then only it will be registered with the Eureka server. Now my application should register with the admin server also. How to register with the admin server? Spring dot boot dot admin client dot URL. Okay, I need to specify client URL. So where is your admin server available? The admin server is running on the port number 1111. http colon / localhost colon 1111. So this is the admin server URL. I'm configuring admin server URL. My application should register with the Eureka server. My application should register with the admin server. My application should register with the Zipkin server. My application should run on the port number 8081. And my application should have actuator endpoints. How to configure actuator endpoints for our application? To configure actuator endpoints for our application, we will use management.endpoints.web.exposure.include star. I'm going to include all the actuator endpoints. I want to expose all the actuator endpoints for my application. So this is the configuration we need to do in the YML. Application name, nothing but our microservice name we configured. So admin server URL we configured, port number we configured, Eureka server URL we configured, actuator endpoint also we enabled and exposed. Currently this property optional because it is running on the 8761. Client will auto register with the Eureka. If Eureka running on the 8761. If Eureka not running on the 8761, client should be registered manually with the Eureka. Are you able to follow me? How I am developing my client application? Yes. So I developed my client application here. In this, I will create one REST controller also. New class, welcome REST controller I am going to create. I'm using the package as .controller. Yes, welcome REST controller to handle the request and response. Welcome REST controller I am taking. To represent this class as a REST controller, I will use one annotation called @REST controller annotation. Let me write one method, public string get welcome message. This is my actual REST API, guys. Public string get welcome message. String message is equal to welcome to Ashok IT. Welcome to Ashok IT. Now let me map it to a get request @get mapping /welcome. The URL pattern I am giving as /welcome and return that message. You can return the message directly or you can return response entity also. I'm returning the message directly. Okay, good. So with this, we are done with our microservice development. So what are the steps we have completed here? We created boot application with these dependencies. We configured enable Eureka server dependency. We configured enable Eureka server dependency, Eureka client enable discovery client dependency, and we created REST controller and we configure properties in the YML file. Okay. Good. So these are the properties I configured in my YML file. So application name, admin server URL, port number, Eureka server URL, endpoints I have enabled. So as I told you, this Eureka's configuration optional now because Eureka running on the port number 8761. Change it, remove that. Okay, we are good. We are good with this. Our applications are ready. Admin server is ready. Eureka is ready, Zipkin is ready. Finally, I'm going to run actual microservice. Okay, so this one, do the Maven update because YML file is modified. Force update of this project, updating this Maven project. Yep, project is updated. Check the Eureka. Currently, any client is registered with the Eureka, guys. Currently, any client is registered with the Eureka. There is no client registered with the Eureka. There is no client registered with the Eureka. Go to admin server. Currently, any application registered with the admin server? No, no application registered with the admin server. Can you go to Zipkin server? Currently, any distributed traces are available in the Zipkin? No. Distributed traces also not available in the Zipkin. So first time I'm going to run actual microservice. So microservice nothing but a small API, a small REST API which will perform only one action. I developed welcome REST API. How I developed welcome REST API? This is the process. I created application with these dependencies and I configured enable discovery client annotation. I created one REST controller, very simple REST controller, which is having a get request method called /welcome. If you send the request to that method, it will return the response as welcome to Ashok IT. And I configure properties in the YML file. Application name, admin server URL, port number, Eureka server URL, actuators I have enabled. That's it. Now, let me run this application now. Before running, I have already shown you. In the Eureka, currently no client is registered. In the admin server, currently no client is registered. In the Zipkin, currently no information is available. Now let me go and run our first microservice, guys. So if you see in the diagram, so our Eureka server running on the port number 8761, admin running on the port number 1111, the Zipkin running on the port number 9411. Now I have started my API. So this API is running on which port number now? This API is running on the port number 8081. The first microservice we developed, first API, it is running on the port number 8081. Go and start it. Go to the start class. go to the start class, which is application.java, right click, run as boot application. Actual microservice we are running. Yes, our welcome service is running. How can we check welcome service is running or not? Go to Eureka, refresh Eureka dashboard. Can you see in the Eureka dashboard, welcome service is registered? Guys, can you see in the Eureka dashboard my welcome service is registered? In the Eureka dashboard my welcome service is registered or welcome service is not registered? Welcome service is registered in the Eureka dashboard, not registered in the Eureka dashboard. Come on, respond. So can we say welcome service is acting as a Eureka client? Can I say welcome service is acting as a Eureka client? Okay, now go to admin server. Can you see? Earlier it was saying no applications registered. Now in the admin server, welcome service is available. One instance is available. Open this one. Okay, welcome service is available. Now let me click on this welcome service. So this is the monitoring. Wall board is available, applications available, welcome service available in the admin server. Open this welcome service now. Open this welcome service, application Spring Boot admin server, wall board, applications. Yes, application is available, welcome service is available, localhost colon 1111. Yes, welcome service is registered with this admin server. Let's go here, environment, beans, configuration properties, dependencies, loggers, all this information we can access and we can monitor our application. What are the URL mappings available in your application? What are the cache available in your application? What the metrics of the application we can get, environment details of our application, configuration properties, loggers. Currently, the application log level is info. We can change it to debug. Without restarting the server, we can change the log level of the application. This is one interview question. How can you change the log level of the application without restarting the server? So that's where admin server comes into picture. By using this admin server, we can monitor our application and we can manage. So what are the threads information available? What are the processes running? How the garbage collection is working in our project? What is the heap memory in our application? What is the non-heap memory in our application? All the memory details, logger details, JVM details, thread dump, download the thread dump of our application, what all the threads running in our application, and download the heap dump. Heap dump contain the sensitive data, so you can download the heap dump of the application. You can download the thread dump of the application. What are the URL patterns available in our application? So dispatcher servlet acting as a front controller for our application. All these kind of things we can access by using this Spring Boot admin server. But what the Eureka server providing? Eureka server is telling you what all the microservices available, what is the status of the microservice, what is the name of the microservice, what is the URL of the microservice that we can access by using Eureka. Admin server will give you the facility to access the actuator endpoints at one place with the beautiful UI. Go to Zipkin, click on the run query. Zipkin traces how many requests came to our application, when the request started, for when the request came to our application, how much time it has taken to process the request. I access the actuator endpoints of our application. So what request came to our application, when that request came to our application, at what time, what date, what time the request came for our application, how much time it has taken to process that request, everything we can access by using Zipkin dashboard. Eureka will give you microservices information, name, status, URL, all that. Then admin server will give you actuator endpoints access. Zipkin server will give you the time taken to process your request. So for your microservice, what request came, when the request came, at what date, what time the request came for our microservice, how much time it has taken in order to process that request. All this information we can access by using this Eureka server, admin server, and Zipkin server. Are you guys able to follow me? Are you able to see the microservice we have created now? Are we able to see the microservice that we have created now? Are we able to see the microservice that we have created now? I'm not getting the response from the people. I'm not getting the response from the people. Now you understand the purpose of Eureka server, admin server, Zipkin server, how they are helping us in the microservices. Are you able to understand the purpose of them? What is the purpose of Eureka? What is the purpose of admin server? What is the purpose of Zipkin server? Is it clear? People who are watching in YouTube, able to follow me? I think 100 people are watching in the YouTube live. 97 people are watching in the YouTube live. Are you guys able to follow me? And please give me a like for the video. That will give more energy that you are able to follow me. Give the like for this video. What people who are attending in the Zoom, are you able to understand? Yes. Just if you add the Zipkin dependency, that is sufficient. Our microservice is automatically registered with the Zipkin server. I have not configured Zipkin URL in our microservice, guys. If you see the properties file or YML file, is there any URL of the Zipkin server in our YML? Is there any URL of Zipkin server? No. Automatically, our application is registered with the Zipkin server. If you add the Zipkin client dependency, automatically it will register with the Zipkin server. Am I configuring Eureka server URL or I am not configuring Eureka server URL? Am I configuring Eureka server URL? I'm not configuring Eureka server URL. I'm not configuring Eureka server. So then how our application registered with the Eureka server? How our application registered with the Eureka server? Because of 8761 port number. If Eureka running on the different port number, then we need to register that manually. Do you know how to register manually? One property we need to add. I have given the property. You need to give the URL of your Eureka server for this property. Then your application registered with the Eureka server manually. Okay. So are you good with this development? Are you good with this development now? So once this is done, run the application and check in the Eureka dashboard. It is displaying in the Eureka dashboard. Check admin server dashboard. We are able to access our application details in the admin server. And we are able to send the request to the actuators. And you can access your REST API also. Localhost :8081/welcome. Localhost :8081/welcome. Welcome to Ashok IT. This is the actual REST API method. We are able to access that REST API method also. We are able to access our REST API method. Now see here, welcome service got the HTTP GET request. How much time it is taking for processing that request? That complete information we are able to access. So 23 milliseconds it is taking in order to process our HTTP GET request. Go to admin server. It will give you the information of your application. Actuator details you can access. Info endpoint is not enabled. So this is going to give you actuator endpoint details of your application. And Eureka server will give you what is the API is available, how many instances available, what is the status, and what is the URL of your microservice. We can see in the Eureka dashboard. Okay. Now, so with this we are able to understand how to develop one microservice. which is acting as a client for Eureka server, acting as a client for admin server, acting as a client for the Zipkin. So if you just add the Zipkin dependency, it will register with the Zipkin server. If you use enable service discovery client, it is registering with the Eureka server. Okay, are you clear with our microservice development? So total 4 projects are running in my system. Eureka server project is running, admin server project is running, Zipkin server project is running, my welcome REST API is running. So total 4 projects are running in my system. That means we can say 4 microservices are running in my system. One is Eureka server, second one is admin server, third one is Zipkin server, and fourth one is welcome REST API. 4 microservices are running. And 4 microservices are running in 4 different servers with 4 different port numbers. Eureka running in the Tomcat with port number 8761. It is not our Tomcat. It is embedded Tomcat. Eureka server running on embedded Tomcat server with 8761. Admin server running in one embedded Tomcat server with 1111 port number. Zipkin server running in another Tomcat server, embedded Tomcat server with 9411 port number. My welcome REST API, my welcome microservice running in embedded Tomcat server with port number 8081. So total 4 servers are running in my system. 4 microservices are running in my system. Able to follow this? You can check the CPU utilization because 4 processes are running in my system. Go to the task manager, performance, CPU utilization, it is increasing. So around 30 to 40% of CPU is utilized in my system because 4 servers are running, 4 microservices. Every microservice running in a separate server. Every microservice running in a separate server. Now, can we develop one more microservice, guys? Can we develop one more microservice now? Same process, but one dependency I will add extra, Feign client I will add extra for the inter-service communication. So I'm going to develop another microservice which is used for inter-service communication. I'm going to develop another microservice. Okay, that microservice is going to maintain inter-service communication. So what is the meaning of inter-service communication? One microservice is going to communicate with the another microservice. For that we are going to use Feign client. Okay, can we develop one more microservice now? Come on guys, can we develop one more microservice? I'm not getting response. Yes, so that this time I'm going to develop one microservice with a name called Greet API. I'm going to develop one microservice with a name called Greet API. The procedure is same. The procedure is same. Create a boot application with below dependencies. Create a boot application with below dependencies. One extra dependency I will add, that is called Open Feign dependency. It is a new dependency I am adding, which is called Open Feign dependency. What is the meaning of this Open Feign dependency? It is used for Feign client. What is the meaning of Feign client? Feign client is used for inter-service communication. I'm using one dependency called Open Feign, used for inter-service communication. The remaining complete process is same. Configure this annotation, create a REST controller, configure the properties in the YML file, run the application and check it. That's it. Only one thing different, one thing extra, Open Feign dependency I have added. Remaining all the process is same. Steps to develop the Greet API, enable discovery client. Here Greet REST controller I am going to create. Here I am going to use the message as greet, get greet message, and I will give the message as good morning. That's it. Yeah. Create a Greet REST API. Greet microservice I am creating. These are the dependencies. You know already what is the purpose of them. One dependency extra we are adding, that is Open Feign. Then configure this annotation at the start class. Then create one REST controller with the required method. Then configure these properties. So this is going to be our fifth microservice 05 greet service. This port number I will use 9091. This port number I am going to use as 9091. This is Eureka client URL, and these are the actuator endpoints we are going to configure. Then run this application, and you can check that in the Eureka dashboard, and you check the server dashboard, admin server dashboard. You can send the request to the REST API, and you can check the request details in the Zipkin dashboard. Okay, so let me create this greet REST API. Go to this IDE. Let me create the fifth project. File, new Spring Starter project. Give the name 05 greet API or greet service. 05 greet service, Maven project, jar file, Java version 17. Click on next, dependencies. Discovery client, dev tools, code centric admin client, okay, Spring web starter, actuator, Zipkin. Okay, you see the dependencies I'm adding. One more dependency that we need to add, which is open Feign dependency. Open Feign dependency we need to add, which is a Feign client. For the inter-service communication, I need this open Feign. REST client for dynamic implementation of interface decorated with the MVC annotation. Select the open Feign. This is the new dependency I'm adding. So in the first microservice, there are 6 dependencies available. In the second microservice, there are 7 dependencies available. So I want to register with the Eureka server, Eureka discovery client dependency I have taken. I want to register with the admin server, admin client dependency I have taken. I want to register with the Zipkin server, Zipkin dependency I have taken. I want to develop a REST API, so web dependency I have taken. I want to restart the server, dev tools dependency I have taken. I want to configure actuators, actuator dependency I have taken. I want to enable inter-service communication, Feign client dependency I have taken. Are you clear with the 7 dependencies I have added for the second microservice? Click on next, click on finish. Yes, project is getting created. This is our 5th microservice, guys. Third one is not available here because Zipkin server directly we downloaded as a jar file. Greet service is created. Go to pom.xml. Check the new dependency we have added, which is Feign client. What is the purpose of Feign client? One microservice wants to communicate with the another microservice. That is called inter-service communication. We will achieve the inter-service communication by using Feign client. So Spring Boot Starter actuator dependency available, Spring Boot Starter web dependency, admin client dependency, Zipkin dependency is available, Eureka client available, Feign client is also available. This is the new dependency we added. Dev tools dependency available. Okay. Now first step, let me configure Eureka discovery client annotation in the start class. So let me go to boot application start class, second microservice start class, the annotation which is enable discovery client annotation. Done. After this, create a REST controller. I'm creating one REST controller with a name called greet REST controller. New class. I'm keeping this in a controller package, and I'm giving the class name as greet REST controller. To represent this class as a REST controller, I will write one annotation called @REST controller annotation. This annotation will make our class as a REST controller. It will make our class as a distributed component. Now, inside the REST controller, let me write one method, public string get greet message. Okay, string message. I'm taking a message as good morning. I'm taking this message as a good morning, and I'm going to return this message. Let me map this method to HTTP GET request by using get mapping annotation /greet. So if you send a HTTP GET request to the greet URL pattern, it will respond with good morning as a response. Okay, REST controller is ready. Then configure the properties in the YML. What are the properties we need to configure? First of all, properties file is available. Change this properties file to YML file. Spring, convert the dot properties to .yml. Properties file I am going to delete and I am keeping only YML file. Name of the application is available. Configure server port number, server dot port. This is a second microservice. I am giving the 9 series for this. Server port is 9091. Register with the admin server spring.boot.admin.client.url. Okay, I am registering this application with admin server. For this admin server URL http://localhost:1111. This is my admin server URL. Server port is also available. Next one, configure actuator endpoints. Eureka server I am not configuring because port number is same. Configure actuators. How to configure actuators? management.endpoints.web.exposure.include star. I'm going to enable and expose all the actuator endpoints for my application. Okay, that's it, right? So these are the properties. Name available, admin server URL, port number, actuators. Eureka server URL, optional. I'm not configuring. That's it. So once it is done, then run the application and check in the dashboard. For that, first let me update my Maven project because I changed the properties file to YML and I added new properties in the YML. Update the Maven project. Remember, whenever you change anything in the YML file, immediately it will not reflect, guys. So you need to update that. You need to update that. Yes, my properties are updated. Now let me run the fifth application. Before going to run, let me show you Eureka. In the Eureka currently only welcome application available. Let me show you Spring Boot admin server. Only welcome is available. Let me go to Zipkin server. Only welcome service traces are available. So greet service traces are not available. Greet service is not available in the Eureka dashboard. Greet service not available in the admin dashboard. Greet service not available in the Zipkin dashboard also. Okay, now let me start my second microservice. As per our diagram, this is our second REST API that we have created. First REST API, second REST API. Okay, so let me run this application as Spring Boot application. It will register with Eureka. It will register with admin server. It will register with the Zipkin server also. Go to this dashboard and check it. Go to this dashboard and check it. Refresh. It is still getting started. Greet service is getting started. Once the greet service is ready, you can check. Yes. So in the Eureka dashboard, Eureka running on the 8761 port number. In the Eureka, you can see greet service available as a client. It is running in one instance. That means in one server, the greet service application is running. The greet server application status is up, and this is the URL of the greet service. So welcome service is one microservice. Greet service is another microservice. Two microservices are available. So like this, how many microservices are available in our application? What is the names of those what are the names of those microservices? What is the status of each microservice? In how many servers the microservice is running? That is called instances. How many instances available for the microservice? And what is the URL of that microservice? We can access by using Eureka dashboard. Now go to admin server. There are two applications registered with the admin server. One is the welcome service, another one is the greet service. Now go to Zipkin server. Welcome service is available. Run the query. Greet service is also available. So greet service is started. So it took 32 milliseconds of time. So you can monitor your application. You can monitor your microservices by using admin server. You can see how many microservices available by using Eureka dashboard. So currently we have welcome service and we have greet service. And the next one, we are having Zipkin server. What is the purpose of the Zipkin server? By using Zipkin server, we can understand how much time it is taking to process each request. How much time it is taking to process each request? We can understand by using Zipkin. Now let me go for 8081/welcome. This is first microservice response. Let me go to second microservice. Localhost colon 9091. Localhost colon 9091/greet. Localhost colon 9091/greet. We are getting good morning. So first REST API, first microservice giving the response as welcome to Ashok IT. Second REST API giving the response as good morning. So two microservices are running as expected. Two microservices are running as expected. Now, can I say my two microservices are acting as a client for Eureka, acting as a client for admin server, acting as a client for Zipkin server? Can we say them? Can we say that our two microservices are acting as a clients for Eureka, acting as a client for admin server, client for Zipkin server? Admin server is used to monitor and manage. Zipkin server used for distributed tracing. Eureka server to get the information about the microservices. So API 1 and API 2, two microservices available. These two microservices are registered with the Eureka server, registered with the admin server, registered with the Zipkin server. Our two microservices, Greet API, Welcome API, are acting as clients for the Eureka server, for the admin server, for the Zipkin server. My API 1, that is Welcome API, running on 8081. My Greet API is running on the port number 9091. Different port number I have given. Two applications cannot run on the same port number. That's why for every microservice, there is a different port number. For the service registry, port number 8761. For admin server, port number 1111. For Zipkin server, port number 9411. For the Welcome REST API, port number 8081. For the Greet API, port number 9091. So total 5 microservices running in my system. Currently 5 microservices running in my system. Now, is there any relation between Welcome REST API and Greet REST API as of now? Is there any relation between Welcome REST API and Greet REST API as of now? There is a relation or there is no relation between these two REST APIs? There is no relation, but I want to establish the relation. So when I send the request to the Greet REST API, I want to communicate from the Greet REST API to Welcome REST API. So if I send a request to the Greet REST API, Greet REST API should communicate with the Welcome REST API. So one microservice wants to communicate with the another microservice which belongs to same application. That is called inter-service communication. Okay, in the real time, one application will communicate with the another application. One REST API can communicate with the another REST API, provider and consumer. Provider concept and consumer concept will be available. So this is provider application, that means which is giving the services to other applications. And this is consumer application, which is accessing the services from other application. Provider application, consumer application is available. Consumer application wants to communicate with the provider application. One application wants to get the services from other applications. So these are distributed applications. How many ways one application can communicate with the another application? You have 3 approaches, guys. One is by using REST template. By using REST template, one application can communicate with the another application. REST template is one option. And the second option is web client. And the third option is Feign client. One is by using REST template. Second one is by using web client. Third one is by using Feign client. So now I want to go with the Feign client. Sir, why only Feign client? So why not REST template? Why not web client? When you go for REST template, you need to write like this: rt.get for entity, something like this. You need to specify the URL. You need to hard code the URL. When you go for web client also, client.get, you need to specify the URL. With which API you want to communicate. That API URL you need to give to the REST template and you need to give the URL to the web client. But when you go for Feign client, what is the benefit? When you go for the Feign client, load balancing will be available. Without giving the URL, you can access the API by using service name of the API. So generally, when one application wants to communicate with the another application, so that means consumer is available, provider is available. If a consumer wants to communicate with the provider, three approaches available in the Spring Boot. What are those three approaches? One is REST template, second one is web client, third one is Feign client. REST template, web client. If you use REST template, get for entity method, URL you need to configure. If you go for web client dot get method you need to call, you need to configure the URL. But for example, tomorrow, if my provider is running in multiple servers, if there is a load balancing for the provider, if a provider running in the multiple servers, then how do you send the request by using REST template? My provider application running in 3 servers for the load balancing. Then how the REST template will access the provider? Only one URL available or 3 URLs available for the provider? 3 URLs available for the provider. When you go for REST template, always you need to send the request to single URL. That means you are keeping burden on the single server. So in the real time, our application will not run on the single server. For the load balancing, our application will run on the multiple servers in the real time. So when you go for the REST template, what is the problem? You need to specify to which URL you should send the request. When you go for the REST template, get for entity, you need to specify to which URL you should send the request. But my provider is having one URL, my provider is having 2 URLs. My provider is having 2 URLs. Then how do you send the request? To which URL you will send the request? Confusion. If you configure particular URL, always the request will go to single URL. But I want to implement load balancing. I want to run my provider in multiple servers, multiple instances I want to use. Same application I want to run in the multiple servers for the load balancing. Then how do you establish communication from one microservice to another microservice? You should not communicate with the URL. If you want to access one REST API from the another REST API, you should not use the URL. You need to use the service name. So that's where in the Eureka server, service names are available. By using this service name, my greet API will communicate with the welcome API. Welcome API service name available. So my greet API wants to communicate with the welcome API, but not with the URL, with the name of the service. So that's where Feign client will come into picture. So when you go for the Feign client, by using Feign client, we can establish the communication from one microservice to another microservice by using the name of the microservice, not with the URL of the microservice. Generally, when you go for REST template or web client, you need to establish the communication by using URL. If you have only one server, if you have only one URL, no problem. But if I have multiple URLs for one application, if I run my application in the multiple servers for the load balancing, 3 or 4 URLs available. Then to which URL you will send the request? Will you send the request to the same URL every time? Not recommended. If you send the request to the same URL every time, burden will be increased on the server. We need to use that load balancing technique. My request should go to different URL every time. My first request should go to first URL. My second request should go to second URL. My third request should go to third URL. So then how you will establish the inter-service communication? That's where Feign client comes into picture. What is the benefit of Feign client? Feign client will establish the communication from one microservice to another microservice by using name of the microservice, not with the URL of the microservice. When you go for REST template or web client, that is communication with the URL. In the Feign client, communication with the name of the microservice, not with the URL of the microservice. Are you able to understand what is inter-service communication? Damn sure interview question. When you are attending the interview as a Java developer, microservice is mandatory. They will ask you how one microservice can communicate with another microservice. Can you tell me what is the meaning of inter-service communication? Can you tell me what is the meaning of inter-service communication? How do you establish inter-service communication? What is the difference between REST template and web client? REST template and web client, and when to go for Feign client? Feign client is used for inter-service communication. Why we are going for Feign client? Because my provider is not running in one server. My provider is running in the 3 servers, 3 URLs available. Then how do you access provider? With which URL you will access the provider? Confusion, conflict. So that's why Feign client will come into picture. If you use Feign client, what is the benefit? No need to specify the URL of the provider. Specify the name of the provider. If you specify the name of the provider, then Feign client will get the URL of the provider based on the name. If a provider having multiple URLs, then every time it will use one URL to first request go to first URL, second request go to second URL, third request will go to third URL. That is load balancing. So we can achieve load balancing by using Feign client. Inter-service communication. Are you able to follow me? Are you able to follow me? So if you are establishing inter-service communication, so your consumer application, provider application, both are registered with the service registry, then you can use a Feign client for the inter-service communication. For example, my consumer and provider are from different projects. My consumer and provider from the different projects, then you can go for REST template. External service nothing but provider is developed by someone. Provider is not from our company. Provider is not from our project. Then external service communication. For external service communication, REST template or web client. For inter-service, so consumer provider in the same project. One is Greet API, another one is Welcome API. Both are in the same project. Both are registered with the service registry. Both are available in the Eureka. When both wants to communicate, then why to go for URL? Because URL can change in the future and a number of URLs can be increased. Today I am running in my Welcome API in one server. Tomorrow I will run the Welcome API in the multiple servers. Tomorrow my Welcome API running in one server. After a few days, I will run that in the 10 servers, 10 different URLs. Then how do you communicate? So that's where we will use a Feign client, which is used to achieve inter-service communication. Okay. Are you able to understand what is the purpose of a Feign client? Yes. Okay. Good. Now, can I establish inter-service communication by using service name now? Can I establish inter-service communication by using Feign client now? So let me go to Greet API and let me create a Feign client for the Welcome API. So Greet API is available. Let me name it as Greet and this is Welcome. Greet API is available. Welcome API is available. When I send the request to the Greet API should communicate with the Welcome API by using Feign client. Now tell me where we need to create the Feign client. Which service want to access which service, guys? By looking at the diagram, can you tell me which service want to access which service? Which service want to access which service now? Welcome want to access Greet or Greet want to access Welcome as per the diagram arrow mark? As per the diagram arrow mark, who want to access whom? Greet want to access Welcome. So Feign client should be available in the Greet API or Feign client should be available in the Welcome API? Feign client should be available in the Greet API or Feign client should be available in the Welcome API? In the Greet API. In the Greet API. Feign client should be available in the Greet API that Feign client is going to communicate with the welcome API. So Feign client will communicate with the welcome API by using welcome API URL or by using welcome API name. Inter-service communication we will establish with the name of the API or URL of the API, which is recommended. Communicating with the name of the API or communicating with the URL of the API, which is recommended. Can you please respond? Which is recommended? Name is recommended. Why not URL? Name is recommended. Why not URL, guys? What is the problem if I use URL? URL can change in the future, and that server can run in the that API can run in the multiple servers. Then multiple URLs will come into picture. So that's why inter-service communication always we need to establish by using name of the service, not with the URL of the service, because today one URL, tomorrow URL can change, and tomorrow multiple URLs can be available. Okay, so after this Feign client is completed, now I will show you load balancing by running one server, by running one application in the multiple servers. Okay, now let me create the Feign client in the Greet API. New interface, guys. Feign client is an interface. You no need to provide the implementation also. Client package, welcome Feign client. Welcome Feign client interface I am creating. How to represent this as a Feign client? By using a annotation called @Feign client annotation. By using one annotation called @Feign client annotation. So to represent this is a Feign client, na, I'm using one annotation which is @Feign client. For which service it is going to act as a Feign client? For which microservice we are going to configure this as a Feign client, guys? We are going to configure this as a Feign client for the welcome service. What is the name of the welcome service? You can access from the Eureka dashboard. This is the name of the welcome service. Copy this name and give that name here. That's it. So this is a welcome Feign client which is going to access welcome service. I'm giving the name of the service, not URL. Feign client will get the URL from the service registry based on the service name. URL can change. Multiple URLs can be available. Then Feign client will get the URLs of the service based on the name of the service. Now, by using this Feign client, what request you want to send to the welcome service? By using this Feign client, I want to send one GET request, GET welcome message. How to send a GET request? Let us write @GET mapping. What is the welcome service method URL pattern? /welcome. Now observe, there is a lot of work will happen in the background in this scenario. Whenever you call this welcome message method available in the Feign client will go to service registry and Feign client will get the URL of the service. For that URL, it will send a GET request with the welcome URL pattern. That is the meaning of that. So lot of internals are going to happen here. Whenever you call get welcome message method, Feign client is going to contact with the service registry, service discovery. Why people will call it as a discovery? It is used to discover the service URLs based on the service name. So when I call this method using Feign client is an interface. I no need to provide the implementation. Spring Cloud will take care of the implementation. So when you create the JPA repository, we are not creating the implementation. Data JPA will provide the implementation. Similarly, when we create the Feign client interface, implementation will be provided in the runtime by the Spring Cloud. So when you call this method of Feign client, then what will happen in the background? Feign client will go to the service registry, will get the service URL based on the service name and will send the GET request to that service by using /welcome URL pattern. In the welcome REST controller, we have that GET request method. So if you see welcome service, welcome REST controller, there is a GET request method available with the /welcome. So I want to send a GET request to the /welcome. That's why I'm configuring that in the Feign client method. Get welcome message method available. So I want to send a GET request to the welcome service by using this method. So when you call this method, Feign client will get the URL of the service. That service can have one URL, it can have multiple URLs. If it is having one URL, send the request to that URL directly. If it is having multiple URLs, then Feign client will implement load balancing. First request will go to first server, second request will go to second server. I will show you practically. Now, send a GET request to the welcome service / welcome URL pattern. Where is the URL of the welcome service? Eureka server knows that. My Feign client will talk to Eureka server, will get the service URL, and to that service URL, it will send a GET request with the / welcome. That is Feign client inter-service communication. Now let me call this Feign client method. Go to greet REST controller. Let me inject my Feign client private welcome Feign client, which is welcome client. How to inject it? @auto wiring. @auto wiring. Now let me call the welcome client method. Welcome client dot get welcome message. Welcome client dot get welcome message. I'm calling welcome client dot get welcome message. So it is going to give you the response of the welcome API, and this is greet message. Okay, now I want to combine the response. Good morning, which is greet message plus welcome message. Greet message plus welcome message. Combined response I am going to send. Combined response I am going to send. Are you clear with my point? Greet REST controller is available. In the greet REST controller, I injected Feign client. What is this Feign client? It is used to access the welcome API. Send the GET request to the / welcome. Welcome REST controller will give some response. Store that response into your variable. This is a greet message. This is a welcome REST API response. Combine the greet message and welcome message. Send the final response to the client. So if you send the request to the greet API will use a Feign client, will send the request to the welcome API, get the response from the welcome API, combine that response and send the final response to the client. So this is inter-service communication. We are sending the request to the welcome API. We are sending the request to the greet API. Greet API sending the request to the welcome API. Welcome API will give the response to greet API. Greet API will give the final response to the client. One service communicating with the another service. No REST template, no web client. I'm using Feign client. By Feign client, we can communicate from one microservice to another microservice by using the name of the microservice, not with the URL. Why not with URL? URL can change in the future, and one microservice can have multiple URLs if you go for the load balancing. So never communicate by using URL. Communicate by using service name. So when you use a service name, Feign client will go to that service registry, Eureka server. Hey Eureka, I want to communicate with the welcome service. Can you give me the URL of the welcome service? Welcome service can have one URL. Welcome service can have multiple URLs. Service registry will give the URLs to the Feign client. So if you have multiple URLs, from those multiple URLs, Feign client will choose one URL, will communicate with the welcome service. Are you guys able to understand my point? Are you guys able to understand my point? Difficult or easy? Lot of depth is there. If we really work on the microservices, then only we can teach these concepts, guys. It's very, 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 very important. It's very, very, very important. Okay, can we test it? The Feign client is working as expected or not? So now you observe, greet REST controller having welcome Feign client injected. Welcome Feign client is what? It is an interface. It's not a class. It's an interface. What about implementation? Spring Cloud will provide in the runtime by using proxy. Okay, I'm configuring the name of the welcome service. So whatever the name you are giving for the service, guys, that name should not be changed. Whatever the name you are giving, that is fixed name, you should not change in the future, because if you change the name of the microservice, then Feign client will not work, because Feign client is completely working based on the name of the service only. So you should not change the names. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? Can we test it? Feign client is working or not? Yes. Feign client is, let me stop all the services and let me restart everything. System will be hanged because 4-5 services are running at a time in our laptop. If your laptop is having 4 GB, using that laptop you can do iron for your shirts also. That much heat will generate. Clean everything. Yeah. First let me run the service registry. Greet API is available. Okay, let me run the service registry. Run as a Spring Boot application. I'm restarting my service registry. Fresh Eureka server will come. No clients for Eureka now. We need to restart all the services again. Okay, I'm running my Eureka. It's waiting. Yeah, Eureka server started. Eureka dashboard we can see. Currently, any instances available in the Eureka? No instances available in the Eureka. Brand new Eureka server started. Now let me go with the admin server. Run as boot application. Run as boot application. It will run on the port number 1111. Currently, there is no relation between Eureka and admin server, guys. Eureka is separate. Admin server is separate. Admin server will run on the port number 1111. So currently no applications are available in the admin server also, because I have stopped everything. I'm restarting them. Yes, Eureka server started. 8761 is the port number. No instances available. Admin server started. 1111 port number. No applications registered. Zipkin server is available. Okay. So Zipkin server is started. These are the earlier things. I have not restarted Zipkin. If you want, I can restart the Zipkin also. Control C. Let me stop the Zipkin. Yes, Zipkin stopped and restarted. It will run on the port number 9411. Zipkin server we are taking as a jar file and we are running that jar file. It will run on the port number 9411. It will run on the port number 9411. Guys, one more thing. Today we cannot complete everything. We have the class tomorrow also. Tomorrow 7 to 9:30 a.m. 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. continuation class is available. Tomorrow we will understand load balancing, API gateway, config server. Another 2.5 hours class we are extending for tomorrow. Tomorrow same Zoom link, 7 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. class will be available. You can join with the same Zoom link tomorrow morning also. Tomorrow morning we are going to understand API gateway, load balancing, config server concepts are available. Today I can't complete everything. So tomorrow we are going to continue the same session. Okay. Yeah. Tomorrow JRTP people, Spring Boot people will attend the same class, continuation class for tomorrow. Yeah. Go for the Zipkin. Check the Zipkin dashboard. Is Zipkin started? Sorry, I have not executed this file. Yeah. My Zipkin server is getting started. Eureka started. No instances available in the Eureka. And admin server started. No applications available in the admin server. My Zipkin server started. I'm waiting. Yeah. Zipkin is started. Currently, no traces available in the Zipkin. Now let me run my welcome API. Welcome microservice I am running. Run as boot application. Welcome microservice I am running. Okay. This video and class notes. Yes, sir. I am already telling you that you will get the video and class notes in our WhatsApp channel. Channel link I have given in the chat box. For the Zoom people, WhatsApp channel link I have given in the chat box. You can join in that. You will get the notes and video and the project also which I have developed. I will share it. Whatever the code I am writing now, I will store all these things into GitHub repository. The people who are watching in the YouTube also, you can join in the WhatsApp channel to access these notes and to access this video. WhatsApp channel link I am giving in the YouTube comment also, and then the Zoom comment also I have given. Okay, good guys. Next up, welcome API is started. Let us go to Eureka, refresh. In the Eureka, my welcome API is registered. Welcome REST API is available in the Eureka server running on the port number 8081. Now go to Greet application, run this as a Spring Boot application. Greet REST API I am running. Greet REST API also I am running. Inside the Greet REST API, Feign client is available. Feign client is available, which is used to communicate with the welcome REST API. One microservice is going to communicate with the another microservice now. Yes, I'm waiting for Greet REST API to register with the service registry, admin server, and Zipkin server. Then we can test our microservices are working as expected or not. Currently, welcome service registered with Eureka. It is up and running. It is running on the port number 8081. Greet service is terminated. Application failed to start. Welcome Feign client that could not be found. Okay, so welcome API, when I use Feign client, it is not able to read that. So let me write one annotation called enable Feign client's annotation. 2 minutes. Enable Feign client's annotation I am configuring. Okay, let me start my Greet API again. Run as boot application. I'm running my Greet API, guys. I forgot to add this annotation called enable Feign clients. Now I added enable Feign clients. Service ID not legal name. 0 first welcome service. It is not considering that service name properly. Okay, let me change the name of the service. Instead of this one, let me give welcome -service. And for the greet also, welcome Feign client, welcome -service. I'm going to configure. Underscore, it is not accepting for the service name. So I'm giving hyphen for this. And in the greet also, the service name, it is greet service. I'm going to configure, which is greet -service. Okay, let us check it. In the Eureka, welcome service is available, and let me start the greet service. Run as boot application. Greet service I am running. If the greet service is started, we are good. We can test the inter-service communication. I'm waiting for the greet service to start. Inside the greet service, we injected the Feign client. This is my greet service REST controller. In the greet service REST controller, Feign client is injected. So Feign client is having the name of the service, and it will send the GET request to that service. It will get the service URL from the service registry. Refresh. Yeah, we are good. Welcome service registered with Eureka, having the port number 8081. Greet service also registered with the Eureka, having the port number 9091. Now go to welcome service, send a request to the welcome service 8081. We are able to get the response, welcome to Ashok IT. Send a request to the greet service. Earlier, when I sent the request to the greet service, I got the response as good morning. Now send the request to the greet service. Am I able to get greet API response plus welcome API response? Can we say inter-service communication is working now? If you send the request to the greet API, it is giving greet API response plus welcome API response also. Can we say inter-service communication is working? Can we say inter-service communication is working? Now, if you see in my greet REST controller, what is available? Welcome Feign client is available. Using this Feign client, we are calling the get welcome message. So what is there? Am I giving the URL of the welcome service? I'm giving the name of the welcome service. Am I giving the URL of the welcome service? I'm giving the name of the welcome service, name. Then how it will get the URL? From the Eureka server. In the Eureka server, service name available, service URL is available. So Feign client will get the service URL based on the service name and will send a request to that service, and it will give the response from that. Whatever the response we are getting from the welcome API, we are combining that response with the greet API response, and we are sending final response to the client. If you send request to welcome service, you will get only welcome message. If you send the request to greet API, greet message plus welcome message. That means one microservice is communicating with the another microservice, which is called inter-service communication. To establish inter-service communication, we used Feign client. Are you clear with my point? Are you clear with my point? How the microservices are communicating by using Feign client? Very good. Thank you guys. Thank you for attending this session. So ribbon, the load balancing, tomorrow I will explain how the load balancing will work, how the ribbon will work. In the tomorrow session I will show you, and I will show you API gateway also in the tomorrow session. So today, so I think already almost 2 hours 40 minutes of time we spent. If I explain that now, it will take another 1 hour of time. It may be burden for you to digest this concept. So you take the time today and you do the practice. We'll meet again tomorrow morning 7 a.m. Remember, same Zoom link you can use tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. IST, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. 2 hours of time I am going to take. So 13 to 40 minutes of time I will take for load balancing, then API gateway, then config server. We will understand. Tomorrow we will complete this project. So I need another 1 to 1.5 hours of time to complete the pending topic. So if I explain that, people will get confused. You may not get the complete clarity. So that's why I will stop for now. We will continue in the tomorrow session. Is it okay for everyone? If you are okay, then please respond in the chat box. Tomorrow morning 7 a.m. the same class will be continued. This video is already available in our YouTube channel. If you go to Ashok IT YouTube channel, you can check in the live section. This video is available. Yesterday's video, today's video is available in the YouTube channel. You can access it. Thank you all of you. Thank you all of you. The people who are watching in the YouTube, thank you. So please like this video and comment your opinion on this video. So this class notes and class video, the workspace, whatever the projects I am developing here, I will share all these things in the GitHub repository. The repository link I will share in our WhatsApp community channel. Thank you so much. Happy weekend. We'll meet again tomorrow.